Welcome back to a very special branded edition of the Money with Katie show, Rich Girls and Boys. I'm Katie Gaddy-Tassan, and today we are partnering with TaxAct to bring you a conversation to prepare for and feel confident about my favorite time of year, tax season 2023, which somehow is already here. So, without further ado, please welcome TaxAct's Vice President of Tax Operations, Mark Jaeger. Mark, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into it. First, I want to talk about any changes that might be on the horizon in terms of rules and regulations when filing in 2023. I think a lot of people probably don't think about it this way, but tax rules are not static. It's very much a living, breathing organism year to year. So would you mind highlighting a few changes that should be on our radar this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing for this year is the fact that what went away. It's not a story necessarily of, hey, here's new tax law changes to things that you can get around taxes and deductions. It's about what went away. So really, we're talking about the earned income credit, the child tax credit, and the charitable contributions deductions for the standard deduction. So to talk about the child tax credit a little bit, remember that used to be $3,600 for any child 6 and under, and now that's actually dropping to $2,000 in totality, no matter whether somebody's 2 years old or 16 years old. The earned income credit really just went down. For the most part, it used to expand to individuals even at a higher age. And then the total credit amount actually decreased as it relates to this year. And then really it's that charitable deduction was kind of the main change. It's one of those things that used to be $300 for singles and $600 for joint, but that also went away for this year.
Those 87,000 IRS agents, they're putting in work. All right, so if we're talking about taxing something relatively small, like Venmo payments. I've seen a lot of chatter about the Venmo payments. How does the IRS even track you down? Like, am I going to get audited if my friend jokingly sends me a Venmo payment about having done professional work for them?
Yeah, absolutely not. No, they don't have that kind of information to access third-party systems outside the government. I know there's always conspiracy theories of government agencies being able to access anything and everything. But with the IRS, that's absolutely not the case. That's part of the reason why they moved forward with these Form 1099-K changes, or at least the politicians did as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, though the IRS ended up pulling it away. So there's nothing they can do or know as it relates to things happening in your bank accounts, things happening through Venmo, unless Venmo or a bank would actually share that information with them.
Okay, so the FBI man in my phone is not working double time right now. That's good to know. Before we move on, do you have any more tax advice for people who use services like Cash App or Venmo or Zelle frequently as part of their professional life? I feel like this is potentially hugely relevant for our audience that has a lot of self-employed hustlers in it.
Yeah, definitely. It's about keeping things separate. So with those applications like Venmo and Cash App, you really want the option of understanding what's personal and what's business, right? So what's something I did from actual sale of goods or services, and what's something that I just gave my family member $50 for. So if there's options in those applications to indicate that this is for a personal expense or this is for a business expense, you really should indicate that through the selections that they provide. If those third-party platforms allow you to set up a separate account for business and a separate account for personal, it's just really important to do that to keep things separate.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show before too, so I completely agree. And you had mentioned something about the $300 above-the-line charitable deduction change and the way that it's going away. When you say it's expired, does that mean that if I don't itemize my deductions and I was previously writing off a few $100s of donations per year, is that off the table now completely?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So unfortunately, with the expiration of that tax deduction, you now have to itemize in order to get a charitable contribution on your federal return. You know, state rules are a little bit different, but from the federal standpoint, yeah, now you have to itemize, unfortunately.
Got you. All right. So, Mark, in future years, when we are not graced with your expertise, what is a good way for people to stay on top of tax changes like these year to year?
Yeah, definitely. It's honestly first and foremost, it's about reading the news. I will say that find a trusted organization, right, that provides that information. Fortunately, taxes, I don't know, they're not as straightforward as we all want it to be. But at the end of the day, the news organizations, the people that are following the politicians will know kind of what's being discussed first and foremost. But then once things advance or when things move forward with Congress and obviously with the president signing the law, that's when others really come in, like TaxAct. You know, we provide that branded content. We provide the information as it relates to the tax law changes for the years. You can obviously find it through other areas as well, but really it's about finding that trusted source to get the updated tax laws for the year.
So those questions were for everyone out there who has at least some experience with filing yourself, but I do want to make sure that we cover our bases for the folks listening for whom it is their first time filing. I remember my first time filing. It was terrifying, and I spent the whole time on the phone with my dad. So what are your biggest pieces of advice, Mark, for people who are taking charge of their taxes for the first time this year, besides calling your parents?
That's right. Well, honestly, you know, one of the big things I'll always say is talk to family and friends, right? That's just a great way to get started. It's a great way to build confidence, right? Tax is about being confident in what you're doing overall. But really, it's just about getting organized and getting started. You know, you hear those stories about individuals who get those documents in the mail and then they just stuff them in a shoebox or stuff them in an envelope. Quite honestly, it's a great way to start. And that way you don't lose anything that happens throughout the year. And then when you do get started with a tax preparation company like TaxAct, you really get stepped through easy to understand questions. I will tell you, I've looked at the IRS tax code, 80,000 some lines of code. It's even more than that, where, you know, the tax software companies will provide easy to understand questions that just walk you through it, you know, as if you are definitely in this scenario, a new filer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like layman's terms, that's what matters. So
that's right.
Besides what you just mentioned, if you were talking to a younger version of Mark, maybe a Mark that had not spent hours combing through each line of tax code, and this young Mark was anxious and confused about filing for the first time, what would you say to yourself?
So I would say to myself, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. This isn't complicated. It really is, especially for simple taxes. You know, usually the first time filers are really just a W-2, and then that's basically it. There's state taxes to file and things like that. But you'll find that if you just get started, you take a deep breath, you follow those questions, you input that information. Sometimes it can automatically be imported for you, which makes it easy as well. The tools and technology that this generation has compared to 18, 20 years ago, though maybe I'll pretend I'm 29, but 18, 20 years ago, it makes tax filing so much easier. And the fact that, hey, you know, if there are questions, Katie, we talked about family and friends, but you can also get in touch easily through that technology with a CPA or EA through Expert Assist.
Oh, love that. And that's built right into TaxAct?
Built right into the software. So you can schedule a time, you can talk to somebody fairly easily. There's chats that you can have conversations with. You know, it meets each person's needs and the way they want to communicate with an individual person.
All right, let's talk about some common tax season misconceptions. First of all, my favorite, extensions. If you file an extension, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so you have until April 18th here in 2023 to file your tax return. Now, what an extension provides you is an opportunity to wait to file that tax return until October 15th, depending on if it falls on a holiday or a weekend, really a weekend. So with that, what the misconception is that, well, because I filed for an extension, I no longer need to pay my tax liability until October 15th. And that is 100% untrue, right? The IRS and the federal government still wants their money, right? And they want their money on time. So the April 18th deadline for this year still requires you to pay what you're going to owe for the year.
You know, when I first heard about extensions, I thought I had found this like magical loophole. It's like, oh yeah, I got 6 more months to come up with this money. Not so. So I'm glad that you covered that. Here's a misconception that I feel like I hear floating around a lot. It's that, oh, I don't make that much money. I'm not going to get audited. The IRS doesn't have enough skin in the game with someone like me. True or false?
That is false. Now, the IRS did say they're not going to audit any higher percentage of individuals with AGIs or income over $400,000. as part of, getting more agents this last year. But at the end of the day, they still get very worried about credits like the Earned Income Credit, like the American Opportunity Credit, which is for college education costs, and the child tax credit. So they will do things there really to ensure that people are accurately claiming the credit amount that they should be getting. And tax software companies help you with that. But at the end of the day, that's where, honestly, the biggest fraud is. That's where things can really go sideways as it relates to calculating and capturing that credit. So they still do audit those at a fairly high rate.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like income is not as correlated as maybe some other red flags.
That's right. It's really more about those things like those refundable credits that we talked about, where you get money above and beyond what you actually paid in. So the IRS is going to be a little more, I don't know what you want to say, stringent as it relates to making sure that the calculation is proper.
Totally. All right. Well, I would love to give you the floor to talk about any other common or maybe funny misconceptions that you hear regularly that you would want to make sure that our listeners do not fall prey to.
Yeah, this may be something people have heard before, but honestly, I think I get this question every year. I love my dog. I have a dog, a black lab, wonderful dog. We spend a lot of time together, hiding right now. But at the end of the day, my dog is not my dependent. So we cannot claim an animal that we love very much as a dependent on our taxes. The IRS will catch that and they will disallow that deduction or credit.
But wouldn't it be something if you could? Oh my gosh, we've spent so much money on our dog this year. That would be amazing. All right, so finally, I want to make sure that our audience is feeling really good about taxes after listening to this, that they're not confused or anxious. Maybe you've put some minds at ease. Would you be willing to talk about some of the specific ways that TaxAct can ease the burden of filing your taxes?
Yeah, so we've talked about previously that, hey, the question and answers are in layman's terms. We keep it simple. We really want to bring the questions to light that are relevant to your tax situation, right? We don't want to ask a bunch of needless questions that we know you're not going to really need to respond to at all. So the interview is very rambunctious in terms of making sure that you're getting the questions that you should be getting asked. And we talked a little bit about expert assist. Things come up, right? We know you guys aren't full-fledged tax experts like maybe myself. So really it comes down to providing you an opportunity through chat or it's through the phone calls, setting up a phone call with an expert that's a CPA or an EA that does this for a living. So there are different opportunities there. And then we always just like to be careful, right? We want to say our calculations are perfect in a way. Like we always be a little careful with that, but we want to make sure that like we're showing you all that TaxAct is the proper engine. It is the proper program to do your taxes with. And we do offer 100% accuracy guarantee. So if something happens to go wrong, right, we back those calculations up and we will pay out any basically mistakes as it relates to those calculations.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah, I remember I had a very complicated tax season last year, and I was using TaxAct to go through everything. And one of my favorite, this is a silly thing, but one of my favorite parts about using the software was that you don't have to pay for anything until it's done. It kind of hurts to pay up front for something when you're like, oh man, I don't even know what I'm going to end up owing, and I'm already out the gate, in the negative. And I really liked that, you didn't have to pay for anything until you were all done with filing.
Yeah, that's right. We want people to go through it, to try it, to learn from it, and just really feel comfortable with it. Because maybe at the end of the day, you don't feel comfortable with the inputs that you put in there. We sure hope that's the case based off the questions that we ask. But really, it's about seeing what your refund's going to be. It's about reviewing your tax return and just verifying it's right. And then at the end of the day, once you feel like, yes, I'm ready to e-file, I'm ready to pass this along to the IRS, then payment would come into play. But we want people to feel comfortable with what they've done before doing so. Yeah,
I have to admit, I kind of enjoy tax season. I don't know what it is. It's like seeing everything I've earned and going through all of my tax advantaged accounts. I kind of have a good time with it, but I think that's why I host a money podcast. And most people are probably like, yeah, no, you're alone in that belief. All right. So cool. Before we go, we're going to do a little lightning round of quick hits. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is the weirdest tax story that you've come across in your years in the industry?
Oh, the weirdest tax story. Yeah, I don't know if I would say weird. Pretty close to weird, but it was interesting. I actually will take phone calls once in a while to jump on the phone just because I want to hear the voice of the customer and kind of understand what they're going through as well. And one of the ladies, I remember she was from Kentucky. I helped walk her through one of her issues, and we got the problem corrected because she mistyped something. And we ultimately got it corrected so she can go ahead and e-file. She wouldn't let me off the phone, but she swore that she needed to send me a big batch of cookies and a 24-pack of beer. And I said, hey, I'm glad everything got worked out for you, but by all means, you can keep that. I'm just glad you were able to use TaxAct to file your return.
Do your friends think that you talk about taxes too much?
Honestly, no. I think they wanted me to talk about taxes more. And I know that probably sounds a bit strange to a lot of people. But they love it when I talk taxes because they then do taxes themselves and they're trying to figure out every opportunity that they could save money and get a bigger tax refund each year.
I feel like I should start hanging out with your friends instead of mine. I think mine would probably say I talk about them too much. Which Roman emperor first imposed an empire-wide sales tax?
Oh boy, it's a Caesar. I know there were lots of Caesars during that time. So the Caesar I know would be Julius Caesar. So I'm going to go ahead and say Julius Caesar.
I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to take your word for it because you're the expert. If you could name a tax after yourself, which tax would you choose?
Oh boy. So I'm going to go back to my college days here. So if you guys don't know, my last name is Jaeger. And I've often gotten in college that they thought my last name was funny because of the alcoholic drink Jaeger, Jägermeister. So I'm going to say an alcohol tax that was called like Jaeger bomb tax or something along those lines. That would be my tax.
I think taxes would be more fun if they had names like the Jaeger bomb tax.
The Jaeger bomb
Thank
tax,
you so
that's
much,
right.
Mark. It was really great to chat with you. Thank you for stopping by, for helping us feel prepared and ready for tax season 2023. And of course, everybody should go check out TaxAct online, on social, everywhere TaxAct is, and look into how they can help you filing over the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun. Thanks for having me.